So what is an electronic trainer? It's a movement tracking and shot plotting device. More importantly, it's a tool for performance feedback. It captures the details of your performance. It does not diagnose. It just tells you what you did. You have to figure it out. Most importantly, it is not a replacement for shooting. It is a performance diagnostic tool. And it's not a target. So what it does is it gives you knowledge of results. Well, okay, there's two types of knowledge. There's knowledge of the results, what you did. When you look at a target, that's knowledge of results. I can see that I shot a 10. It doesn't tell me how I got there. And then there's knowledge of performance. Okay, that is feedback that provides information about what I did and its impact. Okay, the SCAT gives you knowledge of performance. A coach can give you knowledge of performance. Watching a video, how you feel, that can all tie into knowledge of performance. When we take a look at the SCAT, we're looking at things like time, which is the hold time. But the important thing to remember is time is when you enter the target frame. Okay, it's not time you spent aiming, it's time on target. So whatever is the size of that target frame that you have, when you enter it, that's when the clock starts. 10.0 is one of the variables, is the percentage of 1 second prior to the shot breaching the target. So that's the actual 10. How much time did you spend within that 10 in the last second? 10AO calculates your mean point of aim. Okay, so where were you holding? How big was that area? And how much of that was the size of a 10? It could be over, sitting on top of the 6 ring at 3 o'clock, but man, you've got a beautiful hold and you're holding an area the size of a 10 for 50% of that last second. Length, that's the trace length. That's how much movement you had in the control figure, control interval, I should say. Usually a second is the way that we go with it. The lower your trace length, the steadier the hold. And then we have what's called the aim breach gap, which I believe under the new SCAT system, they've labeled it DA. But that's the distance between where you're holding, okay, the center, you'll see a little yellow plus sign. So where the mass was built, and then where the center of the pellet that you breached the target. Ideally, you want to have that pellet landing right on top of the where you were aiming. You want to be able to hit what you were aiming at, and it usually indicates trigger cleanliness. There's a ton of new data available within the new SCAT, but it comes down to basically the same thing: shooting score, with or without decimal, stability of hold, and it's usually, instead of just having the trace length of S1, which is the interval before the shot breaches, there's also S2, which is the mean trace speed for the control interval before, I should say. There's also one for after. I'm not as familiar with the new SCAT details, but I can show you what we're talking about. DA is that cleanliness of trigger that we were talking about. Aiming accuracy in the 10.5, the 10.0, and then the area of the 10. Again, these are the items that you want to look for: aiming time, stability of hold, accuracy of aiming, cleanliness of trigger, and the shooting delta. Here's what an old SCAT what the screen looks like. First thing that we're going to take a look at is time on target. You notice this athlete is running at 9.5 seconds for the first series, 10.2, 9.3, 9.4 for an overall time on target of about 9.6 seconds. That's actually a really good gauge to have. That's a good time frame. What you can also do is you can actually run the standard deviation on those outside in Excel, and you can use that consistency in timing as another performance, factor. Then we look at stability of hold. So that's the length. It's the S1 under the new software. The closer you get, if you're in the 100 range, like we see some shots here that are like upwards of 164 down to 95. These are pretty good trace lengths. Lower is always better. Aiming accuracy. So how much were you actually in the 10? And we want to express that as a percentage. We're seeing a lot of variation here, 7%, 64%. So we're looking at overall of 43, 42. How close are you to putting it on top of or how good is your aim? Together, we're looking at the 10 and the 10AO. Are you able to hold on the area the size of a 10 and put it in the 10.0? You want to keep these two items. Let's say on the first series, you have 43 and 75. You want to bring those numbers together, ideally 75 and 75, or whatever number you have. With this shot, we can see that, well, we'll just carry on. Cleanliness of triggering. This is at the end. In the new system, it's called DA. And if we were to zoom in on this shot, we would see that the shot center of the pellet is 2 millimeters off the center of the plus sign. You have to remember that a pellet width is 4.5 millimeters. So the person is half a pellet width off. That's a really great shot. But we can also see variances here where they were 22.7 millimeters off. That's a variance that we want to work on and decrease. Excuse me. Okay. Hopefully I'm still on. This is a distance graph. This is a beautiful trigger. Okay. So it's the control interval of 1 second from left to right. So on the right, that's where the shot broke. You can just see that the person is floating on the 10. They're not speeding up. They're not slowing down. Their X and Y axis are flowing together. That's a beautiful shot. Most importantly, when we take a look at the area, the time between, say, 0.3 and 0.2 seconds before the shot break at the extreme right, there's no dramatic change in position. They're not consciously breaking their trigger. They're building up on that trigger, and without disturbing the sights, without moving the gun, the shot breaks. So this is what you want to be looking for. Whereas, if we take a look at a similar off shot, but we've got the distance down below and we've got the displacement on the top, we can see along the top, that hold is kind of all over the place. More importantly, though, during that 0.2 to 0.4 area, we see a very conscious decision to break the trigger. The gun actually speeds up from the movement, and we have an off shot. Now, I say it's an off shot. It's not a good one, but the value was 10.0. Pushed it into the 10. Is it conscious triggering? Was it just instability of the hold, making lots of movement? But there was a very conscious decision here to break the shot, and, well, that was the end result. So when a company with a short trace length, when you got a really stable hold, the shorter the aiming error, the DA, or the aim breach gap, as I've been calling it, the better the shot release. If the hold is poor, moves all over the target, well, that aim breach gap is meaningless. As the trace length decreases, a high aim breach gap indicates a poor release, which is moving the breach point away from the target or from your aim point. And if hold and trigger release is good, then the breach should overlay or be close to where you're aiming at. So you should have your plus and you should have a shot right on top of it. The aim breach gap isn't about aiming at the target, but the error created due to bad triggering. That's really what it's about. As we can see here, this is a nice shot. They're probably, again, about 2 millimeters off. We can see that half a pellet width is away from the aim breach gap mean point of aim. Okay, so I like to see a consistent approach and follow through and exit. If we take a look here, we click on all traces. This feature, by the way, has been removed for some strange reason from the new software, but you could overlay all of the shots. I can see from this athlete that they have an incredibly consistent approach to the target. They have a shot release, and we can see with the red terminating in the majority of the shots, they have an actual follow through. The red line usually signifies the second after the shot. I've seen targets that look like a spider's nest with just lines going everywhere for every angle of the center. It's when you have that sort of inconsistent performance, it becomes very hard to analyze and feel what went wrong. So if I was to prioritize interventions, I need to remember that whatever just happened could actually be tied to a previous activity. So it needs to be put into that context first. It may not be this was the error. It may have been because of something that happened back here. Okay, so don't look at it in isolation of movement. Look at the whole string. You want to choose the intervention that can be expected to maximize improvement. Okay, if we know that you maximize by aiming, reducing your aim breach gap and cleanliness of trigger, working on your hold isn't going to do anything. I did have an athlete. She ended up medaling in China at a CISM event, and man, she had a world-class hold. Like, she was averaging below 100, a trace length of 100. Just phenomenal. And she just kept on working on hold. I have to work on my hold. My hold isn't good. Her trigger was bad. That's where her problem was. So got her on the Scat. I realized where she was after I first checked the equipment to see that it was working, because it was just too good to believe. But then we switched her over to working on her triggering, and her score shot up. And consistency improved greatly. And, you know, they talk about picking the lowest fruit. Start off with making the easiest corrections first. If the movement errors seem unrelated and equal of rank. You know, if they're about the same impact, choose the easier one, get that established. It'll give you a boost in confidence and make you appreciate your training a little bit more. But always maximize improvement. Make sure that you are providing interventions in the sequence of actions in that motor skill. So if I've got a 5-sequence action and the error is that, say, let's say it's taking place at sequence number 3, working on 4 is not a good idea, because eventually I'm going to have to fix 3, and it could change what happens in 4 and 5. Okay, so sort of like going back to the root first and then building up from there. So if item number 3 in my sequence is broken, I go back to 3, I fix that, then I take a look at 4, 5, and whatever. For activities requiring balance, which is shooting, focus first on base of support. So make sure that you've got a good, solid stance. Build from there. Natural point of aim. And improve critical features first. Like, you know, if your triggering is just bad, always work on your triggering. You know, I could almost say, when in doubt, work on your trigger, because that is really the critical factor. Paper I was just reading that was actually from 2022 was based on a guy that was shooting 580 in air pistol, so pretty good. 5 components of his performance represented roughly 80% of his shooting variance. Okay, so when he did these things well, he was rewarded. And these are in no specific order. It was aiming time for the SCAT, that's sort of like time on target, stability of hold, aiming accuracy, cleanliness of triggering, and then shooting delta, and I'll talk about that in a bit. Okay, so aiming accuracy and cleanliness of triggering explained 25% of the shooting variance on their own, with cleanliness of triggering being the most important factor of the 5. So this sort of backs up what I've always told people. You work on your triggering, getting a smooth, progressive trigger, it will convert into points. Okay? Your metrics, your hold, all of these things, they're important, but cleanliness of trigger, that smooth trigger right out of the gate, is the most important one. Now, MEC actually came out with a process for qualitative improvements. I believe it's in the Way of the Rifle or the Air Rifle book. I forget which one. But we start off with the approach. So mounting, aiming path, vertical from above. Placement, which is the approach and aiming. Hold, look at a small area, slow movement and circular. Reaction is a trigger release and follow through. And then consistency. It is from their Air Rifle book. And then with that consistency, all sequences are correct and identical. Ideally, your 20th shot looks like your 40th shot. You know, when you've got your consistency down, you see that duplicability. I did video overlay of Ralph Schumann, who is like the German rapid fire god. And his setup is identical. So his pre-performance routines, you can actually overlay them, and his timing in just getting ready to shoot is identical. Okay, so you want a consistent aiming area on both the, as well as the approach and the exit. Also, when we look at time on target, timing should be very consistent. You want to reduce trace length and increase the 10 AO, your ability to hold an area the size of the 10. Improve that trigger cleanliness, hit what you're aiming at. So reduce that aim breach gap, improve that DA, reduce those DA values on the SCAT. And realize the advantages of a superior hold while improving aim. So, you know, as you reduce that 10 AO, increase your 10.0 as well. So you've got that convergence with your hold with your aim. You want to reduce that delta between 10.0 and 10 AO. So how to use your trainer? Well, you're going to do a benchmark of 5 to 8 trials, 10 to 20 shots each, just to see where are you raw. Get that information, because you're not going to go out once, shoot a 60-shot trial match, and then build all your training from that, because that's a point in time. You want to get an idea of where your performance stands over time. So look at 5 to 10 short trials. Review the performance parameters and those characteristics. You know, do I have a consistent approach? Am I holding a reasonable amount of time? Is my follow through there? What is my aim breach gap? Set standards. Where do you think you need to be? And look for those relevant indicators of success, those 5 that we talked about previously. Come up with an action plan, look at supportive parameters and characteristics, as well as areas for improvement. You really have to come up with where do you want to go with solid goals and plans to get there. You want to deliberately practice, so perform activities which directly challenge and eliminate those performance deficiencies. Again, if I notice that my triggering is problematic, I'm not going to shoot a simulation match. I'm going to just go out to the range and fire a shot, determine if I met or exceeded my parameters for performance, and then repeat and keep track of how well I was doing and any thoughts that come up, why I'm performing well, why I am not performing well. You need to have those things so you can come up with a future action plan. So log those experiences and progress. Then once you've done that, repeat from the benchmark phase and repeat and repeat and repeat. Now, when I have people look at the SCAT, this, by the way, is just a phenomenal set of shots here. Oh yeah, Mikhail Nesterov, he's an Olympic gold medalist. He's pretty good. But you can just see he comes into it. His follow-through is kind of short, but it's consistent. He has a little bit of follow-through, probably less than half a second, and then he's off the target, right back up. So people have asked about F coefficient values. These, I forget where I saw them mentioned, but this came from about 10 years ago. These are the numbers that were given to me. I did a bit of research there. And again, you can ask me for this if you need it. You want to optimize your options. So select the option button on your SCAT, scroll down to practice, which is the first red box, expand to see how much aiming trace to store. I say go to the where it says store X seconds before, change that to 20, and ensure that you've got 1 afterwards. What this does is it allows you to capture the entire approach. That Mikhail Nesterov guy, his hold was so long that he would actually exceed the storage buffer. So it always just seemed like his shots were starting in the center of the target because he would be holding occasionally over 20 seconds and just holding the 10. Not the most efficient delivery, but just godlike hold. If you're having an off shot, okay, so we can see this little pink dot. That's where the shot breached the paper. We can also see over in the 7 ring at like 10 o'clock, we can see where the mean point of aim was. You don't drag the pink line to the center of the target. You don't go from the pink to the center. The pink goes over to where the orange dot is so that the plus sign goes on top of the target. So yeah, you drag the pink dot to the location such that the mean point of aim is placed over the target center. That's a problem I usually see when people are trying to change their sights on the SCAT. There's a competitor to SCAT out now. Like a SCAT will cost you $2,000 if you can get a hold of one. Right now, there's a product called Mantis X. And instead of setting up an infrared relationship between a target and your pistol, which has an emitter, you attach this little Mantis X accelerometer to your pistol. And so what it's doing is it's really taking a look at hold and trigger release, cleanliness of trigger release. This thing goes for $99 up to $249, depending on what you get. They are meant for the IPSC crowd, the practical pistol shooters. But what we've done is we've tested it out with air pistols, which have a very light trigger. And depending on the mount that you have, we can actually get the numbers from it, and they're very helpful. We were surprised at how good they were, especially when you're looking at a savings of $1,500 and the ability, like I actually picked mine up at a local gun store. That's how ubiquitous they are. I do want to just share some final thoughts on pursuing scores. Scores are not a means to an end. Wishing for a score won't get you onto a podium. Performance will dictate results ultimately. You know, do the right actions, you'll get better scores over time. Scores tell you where you stand, and that's important. What are your goals? Just the nationals, the Olympics, the provincials? What score do you need to achieve to get there? And is your performance meeting that required score? And if not, what performance factors do you need to change? Lastly, your actions today determine your achievements tomorrow. You have to know your goals and consistently work against don't work against them. That would be a really bad idea. Know your goals and consistently work towards them. That is the end of my presentation. And I first off want to apologize for going so over. It needs a bit of work, obviously, but are there any questions at this stage? Are there any specific issues that you're running into, either with your SCAT or in your training, or a difficulty that you're having? Let's open it up, and if you have a question, pop on your mic, and maybe first just put it into the chat, and we'll go from there.
I'm too slow at typing, so I'm going to ask instead.
Okay. Okay.
Is the blue line the equivalent of the trigger movement?
The blue line. Just a second here.
The line right after the yellow line.
Okay, so if we go into, let's say, if we go into options.
Like it represents a 20th of a second instead of 1 second.
Yes, it's the last 0.2 seconds before the shot break. So if you go into options,
yeah,
additional intervals. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, this one is the 0.2 seconds before the actual breach. And this is win, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, so that's what we're looking at here. It is this line just before breach.
Okay, I just wanted to identify if that's what it was. I have a thought. The difference between a starting shooter and a experienced shooter, and I'm encouraging my juniors to shoot quicker than slower because they're not capable of holding properly. And you talk about that fellow that can hold for 20 seconds.
Yeah.
If you asked a junior to hold for 20 seconds, it would be touching the 2 line probably.
Well, so, I would start off with, okay, based on my experience, we do try to get them to see their sights, and that's more important than shooting quick or slow. Okay, so once they can establish that they've seen their sights, then they can start their trigger initiation. Getting people to shoot fast, it's a hard habit to break. Certainly they do need to have the strength to hold the gun, but instead of having them shoot fast, I would maybe look at ways that we can lower the gun weight, and also, you know, how can we physically condition them to extend their hold? Yeah,
I think my comment is more applicable to rifle.
Oh, okay.
Because with rifle, you approach the target simply by breathing. You're not muscling anything. You're simply breathing in, breathing out, and as you breathe out, the barrel is coming down, and when you should hit a comfortable breath, that should be the time to go. And what I find is juniors overhold.
Yeah, I can't speak to that on rifle.
Okay. That's it. Thank you very much, Patrick. I really appreciated your process, and I'm looking forward to being able to get these slides because I thought it was very informative. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Shane, am I looking at a different screen? Okay. I wasn't showing the screen. There we go. I was showing the presentation. Now do you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I totally see it now.
I'm not a Zoom guy. I'm a Teams guy. Yeah. Any other questions now that I've figured out how to use this thing? Oh, just a second. Let me open up chat again. Oh, Guillaume, I'm very glad that you got something out of this tonight. Yeah, when I take a look at this SCAT, how often should you do SCAT training? Okay, that's a good question. You're going to use it more so as a performance analysis tool up front. Like what I like to see, you can see on this screen, distinctive patterns where we've got a bunch of green lines coming down from the top into the center. So you're going to work on quite often just getting them to clean up the duplicability of their approaches. The nice thing about the SCAT is that it does provide immediate feedback. So you're going to work with the athlete. You're going to explain what's happening with these shots. Now, if you use it all the time, okay, continuous 100% feedback, what happens? It's a rather cruel thing. The athlete becomes addicted to it. The athlete starts to look at this and doesn't get involved in the troubleshooting and analysis, doesn't develop their own kinesthetic sense of what a good shot is. So then when you take away the SCAT and throw them into a match where they've got a real target, it will be a very rude event for them. So you start high, go low. I would say maybe at the beginning, we're looking at which athletes are you talking, which level athlete are you talking about, by the way? That's maybe a better question. Beginner. Okay, so with a beginner, I did some with some cadets and they just thought it was the coolest thing on the planet because they had lots of information. I had one junior that went on about, oh, we're going to go make squiggles. Squiggles was everything that she was into, which was very strange. But you want to incorporate live surf, so maybe quarter or a third on the SCAT with some live, actually quarter or a third on paper, maybe the opposite on the SCAT. So you've got a lot of SCAT time. Get them used to seeing what their performance looks like. As you go out of preparation into more specific, the specific prep and pre-comp, the SCAT comes out to maybe once a week, well, depending on how often they're training, once a month. So again, there's less time on the SCAT, more time on the paper until they start to get into problems, and then you want to use that as a diagnostic or benchmarking tool. So as you go deeper into the competition phase, the SCAT becomes less relevant in your daily training as you're trying to get them, or I should say competition specific training as you're trying to get them much more comfortable with the idea of performance. Okay. Yeah, it's not the best answer, but it's my thinking on it. Most people don't have such access to a SCAT. When Avi was working on the Olympics, we spent a lot of time predominantly on the SCAT. And then whenever we did, I would say leading up to the Olympics, probably 3/4 live, 1/4 SCAT time. But we were also doing a lot of training, so even that was a high frequency. Any other questions that we might have? Because not everybody has a SCAT. How about any questions on training or planning? Lots of stuff there. Or anything else that's come across your mind? I had interesting chat a while ago about oh my gosh, I'm a little bit fuzzy on tear film quality on your eyes and the impact on the wetness of your eyes on your hold. That's actually a thing. Okay, I'm not seeing any new questions coming up. Does anybody just want to talk for a bit, or are you all dead now after my little bit overlong presentation.
I would just like to thank you because that was really lots of information for me. So I loved it. So thank you from all the athletes, all the coaches that have been able to listen to you. I think that everyone is going to be better shooter because of you, or at least better prepared to plan their training. So thanks a lot.
Oh, you're very welcome, Guillaume. Well, there doesn't seem to be any more questions. Thank you very much for your time. I do really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. And if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to email me at haynes@targetshooting.ca. I usually get responses out within a couple of days. So yeah, have a great evening and thank you for your time.